Bannon, in the dark, sheds light on Trump's foreign policy. The bombastic former White House strategist credits President Trump with annihilating the Islamic State group and responds to critiques from former President George W. Bush and Senator John McCain. Minutes before Steve Bannon was set to take the stage at the Hudson Institute's conference on countering violent extremism, the lights over the indistinct Washington ballroom hosting Monday's day-long event went out. Organizers scurried to roll out floodlights to salvage their keynote speaker, but the unfortunate circumstances ironically handed Bannon's moderator, Hussein Haqqani, an easy introduction. Depending on your political perspective, you can interpret the absence of light in two ways, began Haqqani, the former Pakistani ambassador to the U.S., with President Donald Trump's former chief strategist seated next to him. If you belong to the left of the political persuasion, you might say that this is appropriate because the forces of darkness are up here. And if you have a different perspective, you would say that there is some sort of illumination in the absence of light. Bannon chuckled with the audience, likely unbothered by either interpretation. The reinstalled head of Breitbart News has been gleefully playing the role of political provocateur since leaving the administration, stirring up primary opponents against GOP incumbents, lashing out at the so-called establishment and delivering made-for-TV, apocalyptic-like warnings about what's to come for America First detractors. Yet in this appearance, Bannon was comparably subdued. Rather than launch dystopian-inspired bombast, the former Trump advisor appeared determined to try to explain the president's foreign policy and defend his 9-month tenure to the wonky Beltway think tank community. He credited Trump with accomplishing a war of annihilation over the Islamic State group's so-called caliphate, pointing to the seizure of Raqqa, the extremists' longtime stronghold in northern Syria, by U.S.-backed forces. He noted last spring's Arab summit, in which Trump helped bring Muslim leaders together to confront radical Islamic terrorism. This should put to bed, Bannon said, the misguided ideas that Trump is an Islamophobe or an isolationist. The Trump approach is Jacksonian, according to Bannon, in that it is engaged overseas, but only in the pursuit of U.S. vital national interests. In one area in which he parts with Trump, Afghanistan, he argues that further engagement is foolish because we've tried to impose our values in a country that's not interested in them. After originally favoring pulling out of the country, Trump announced in August a new policy of engagement that would require additional troops at a level to be set by military commanders on the ground. But the continuing quagmire of Afghanistan is only a result of the foreign policies of both parties that preceded Trump, Bannon argued. The geniuses in the foreign policy elite, what they left on President Trump is essentially the Bay of Pigs in Venezuela, the Cuban Missile Crisis in Korea, and the Vietnam War in Afghanistan, all at one time. President Trump didn't do this. The deplorables that voted for President Trump didn't do this. This is the geniuses of both political parties, he said. It was only toward the close of the event that Bannon inched back into his most comfortable space, issuing broadsides against the establishment-minded Republicans who dominated Washington before he became a force. Bannon listed last week's foreign policy remarks of Chinese President Xi Jinping, former President George W. Bush and Senator John McCain of Arizona, and said Xi gave the best of the three. I would respectfully submit that President Xi's speech was an adult speech to adults, and that President Bush and President Xi McCain's speech was just more pablum, he said. And on that note, Haqqani saw his cue. The foreign policy elite of Washington, D.C., that asked me to interview you today told me that, when you start talking about issues other than those that relate to this conference, I should bring this to an end, so I'm going to bring it to an end right now, he replied. To polite applause, Bannon stepped off the stage, and out of the floodlights, and into the ballroom darkness. Please share this post on Facebook with your thoughts.